They use QuickBooks, a multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks.
Quickbooks?
QuickBooks.
Day one of the FTX crypto hearing in Congress was wild. From AOC getting into conspiracy theories, to Brad Sherman grandstanding on why Bitcoin should die. The information that came out of this hearing was big. For example, new FTX CEO John J. Ray has been clear. This level of fraud is so much worse than the Enron fraud, and he details just how amateur the business of FTX was.
Mr. Ray, you have compared FTX as worse than Enron. Can you please elaborate on some of the specific ways FTX is worse than one of the largest corporate frauds in history?
The FTX group is unusual in the sense that, I've done probably a dozen large, scale bankruptcies over my career, including Enron, of course. Every one of those entities had some financial problem or another. They have some characteristics that are in common. This one is unusual, and it's unusual in the sense that literally, there's no record keeping whatsoever. It's in the absence of record keeping. Employees would communicate, invoicing and expenses on Slack, which is, essentially a way of communicating for chat rooms. They use QuickBooks, a multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks.
Quickbooks?
QuickBooks. Nothing against QuickBooks, very nice tool, just not for a multi-billion-dollar company.
Now, I watched all nearly 4 hours of this, so you don't have to. I pulled the best clips. And while Sam Bankman-Fried was not able to testify today, as we discussed yesterday, SBF has been arrested. Here are his charges per the New York Times. Wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy, and money laundering. New FTX CEO John Ray confirmed what we've all known, that there was obviously co-mingling of funds, and the separation between Alameda and FTX was virtually nothing.
The operation of Alameda really depended, based on the way it was operated, for the use of customer funds. That's the major breakdown here. Funds from FTX.com, which was the exchange for non-U.S. citizens. Those funds were used at Alameda to make investments and other disbursements. There were virtually no internal controls and no separateness whatsoever.
And while I'll play you this AOC clip in a second, as well as maybe the creepiest clip to come out of today's hearing, the real question is, just how much money does FTX have left? Because they're in the hole between 10 billion and 50 billion. What's left and who gets paid back first between U.S. versus international?
We've been able to secure over $1 billion of assets. We've secured those to cold wallets in a secure location. It's an ongoing process, though, which will take weeks and perhaps months to secure all of the assets.
Are most creditors located in the U.S. or foreign jurisdictions?
The majority of the creditors trade through the .com silo and are outside of this jurisdiction, although there are some foreign customers that are on the U.S. silo and vice versa.
Representative Brad Sherman chose to spend his 5 minutes, almost all of it, not questioning the people, but instead grandstanding on why cryptocurrency is evil, as if he's been waiting his whole career for this.
For 5 years, I've been trying to ban American investments in crypto. I'm the only member of the House to get an F from the only crypto-promoting organization that rates members of Congress. My fear is that we'll view Sam Bankman-Fried as just one big snake in a crypto Garden of Eden. The fact is, crypto is a garden of snakes. Now, from the outside, crypto just looks like a non-fungible token, an electronic pet rock for the 21st century, something that might be good to invest in even though it has no apparent value because you might get somebody else to buy it from you for even more. But in reality, the hope of crypto is to be a currency, to compete with the US dollar, and to announce its advantage over the US dollar in that competition. It puts the advantage right in the name. Crypto, hidden currency. Now, Sam Bankman-Fried, or should I say inmate 14372, had one purpose in all of his efforts here in Congress. Was a well-known figure, only one wearing shorts. His one purpose was to keep the SEC out of crypto, to provide a patina of regulation, baby regulation from the CFTC. And I'll have one comment from my colleagues. Don't trash Sam Bankman-Fried and then pass his bill.
Now, for every anti-crypto senator, we have more and more pro-crypto senators popping up. Representative Tom Emmer chose to spend his 5 minutes defending decentralization, as well as questioning the new FTX CEO. Just how involved was SEC Chair Gary Gensler in all this? How much did Gary Gensler know?
We know that Chair Gensler had more meetings with FTX than anyone else in the crypto industry. We understand that what was being negotiated was a framework for digital asset exchange registration and token registration with the SEC that would benefit both parties. It would expand the SEC's jurisdiction in exchange for the SEC's preferential treatment of FTX over other industry participants. We understand there was a lot of activity to move this idea forward, including the circulation of draft short-form disclosures that would enable filers to get tokens listed on this newly formed bespoke exchange. Mr. Ray, I know you're handicapped with the information you currently have obtained, but Chair Gensler refuses to answer our questions or testify before this committee. Will you commit to sharing with this committee any internal documents you come across regarding communication between FTX and Mr. Gensler or others at the SEC?
We'll fully cooperate, with the committee and the regulatory authorities with respect to our investigation.
Again, specifically, I just want copies, that this committee will want copies of those communications to the extent they exist.
We can certainly work with your staff to get you what you need.
Thank you. And Mr. Ray, I appreciate you mentioning your concerns in the beginning of my questioning about the concentration of power in a small group of individuals with no oversight. That is the exact problem that open and permissionless technology like crypto and blockchain solve. It solves for the problems of centralization. You stated in your testimony that you've never seen such a, quote, utter failure of corporate controls at every level of an organization, from the lack of financial statements to a complete failure of any internal controls or governance whatsoever, close quote. Fortunately, the immutable characteristics of public blockchains that some people would care not to understand in this committee allowed the crypto community to reveal Sam Bankman-Fried's fraud, and the on-chain public record will assist law enforcement moving forward. I encourage my colleagues to understand Sam Bankman-Fried's con for what it is: a failure of centralization, a failure of business ethics, and a crime. It is not a failure of technology. Decentralization is the point.
And that brings us to AOC, who I thought actually asked a poignant question. Why did Sam Bankman-Fried only get arrested the day before he was going to testify? Does anybody else smell something fishy about Sam Bankman-Fried's arrest? AOC starts by questioning the role of the Bahamian government in terms of bankruptcy, and then asks about the timing of the SBF arrest.
I want to put together a little bit of a timeline of this collapse between November 12th and yesterday. On November 2nd, we have CoinDesk leaking these balance sheets. On the 8th, Binance signs a non-binding letter to acquire FTX, and Bankman-Fried freezes or pauses withdrawals from FTX. I would like to submit to the record your declaration to the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, or FTX's declaration to the U.S. Bankruptcy Court that was filed yesterday. Now, on November 9th, the day after those assets were frozen, Binance announced it would not go through with the purchase, and according to this filing, the same day, Bankman-Fried emailed the Bahamian Attorney General with an offer. That offer stated that he would offer to unfreeze withdrawals just for Bahamian customers on FTX, quote, so they can tomorrow fully withdraw all their assets. Correct. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, on November 10th, FTX DM, the next day, was placed into a foreign provisional liquidation in the Bahamas, correct?
Correct.
The next morning, Now, after that, Bankman-Fried then made good on his offer, on his previous day's offer in that email to the Bahamian AG, opening withdrawals just in the Bahamas for a period of 25.5 hours. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, during that period, $100 million was withdrawn in the Bahamas from FTX by 1,500 individuals, correct?
Correct.
And this was the day before you were set to take over. So he was still in control. This was like right before he was supposed to hand this off. And then on November 16th, the Bahamian appointed joint provisional liquidators did something very interesting. They came here to the United States Bankruptcy Court and sought an entry to recognize the Bahamian liquidation as the main foreign proceeding. Would that additional control be of any potential value to Mr. Bankman-Fried for that Bahamian proceeding to be the main one?
Well, clearly, there seemed to be an effort by the Bahamian Commission to get control of the bankruptcy process, and I think that was evident by their filing, which, by the way, was made up in New York, not Delaware.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that correction. Now, did you uncover any evidence that demonstrates that this window, that 25.5-hour window, opened in exchange for any consideration offered to Mr. Bankman-Fried by the Bahamian Attorney General or any state official, including a promise to initiate liquidation proceedings which might offer a path towards Mr. Bankman-Fried retaining some control or influence over FTX.com?
We intend to investigate that very thing.
Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to dig into a little bit of the timeline of yesterday. Yesterday, you filed that same declaration that revealed some of this explosive information. What time did you file this?
That was late.
Around what time?
Yeah, 3 or 4 o'clock.
Around 3 or 4 o'clock. Now, when you file this information, that essentially discloses that you are sharing this information, and it discloses that to opposing counsel, correct?
Yes, we docket it, and the world knows about it.
Now, if opposing counsel essentially becomes notified of this, that would mean that Bankman-Fried and potentially Bahamian officials would have been potentially privy to that information starting around 3 or 4 p.m., correct?
Correct.
What time was Mr. Bankman-Fried arrested yesterday?
I believe it was in the early evening hours, after 4 o'clock.
I believe it was
7 o'clock, perhaps.
It was in the evening, after that filing.
6, 7 o'clock, yes.
I would like to submit to the record the statement from the Attorney General of the Bahamas issued yesterday on the arrest of Mr. Samuel Bankman-Fried. And after submitting that to the record, I would like to note that in this statement, they stated at such time as a formal request for extradition is made, presumably by the Southern District of New York, but they do not state when that request for extradition was made. Do you believe that information is important for us to understand in order to piece together a timeline, Mr. Ray?
Yes, sir. I certainly don't have that full timeline, and that's something that we look forward to learning.
This is an ongoing story with day 2 of the hearing beginning tomorrow, including a testimony from Kevin O'Leary and others. Be sure to click subscribe so you can stay informed. Also, be sure to grab your tickets for the largest crypto conference in existence, Bitcoin 2023. Use code Altcoin Daily for 10% off. Now, ticket prices do increase in 3 days, so use code Altcoin Daily, 10% off, grab your tickets. And like always, I leave you with this, your moment of Zen.
I wonder if you would support a resolution that I've been thinking about introducing, changing the name of cryptocurrency to creepy dough currency. I'm going to discuss this with my colleagues. I think it's an appropriate name. I just wanted to know whether you would support changing it to creepy dough.
I'll leave that skill set to the committee.